From day one, your job as a small group leader is to move your few out beyond the circle of your group. It may sound a little contradictory when you pair this idea with the others we've talked about. After all, why should we spend our time creating a space where your few can feel safe and comfortable, a space they want to be, if we're going to try to push them out of it? And in a small way, you're correct. We want our groups to be safe places where kids and teenagers are excited to be. We want our groups to be a place of encouragement and growth where our few are challenged to do more than settle for what they think they're capable of. We want all of those things and so much more. But if we're not careful, the circle that our groups exist in can put boundaries on their experiences. Your goal is not to create a group where you invest your time and attention in a few kids and teenagers in order to convince them that the circle is where life stops. Why? Because when they move outside of the circle, they are free to engage with a story that is much bigger than just their story. And you can't do this fifth and final lead small principle effectively if you haven't put in the time and effort required to do the other four. So how do we move our few out of the circle we've spent time trying to build? We start the process from day one. First, move them to someone else. Research shows that a kid who has 3 or 4 committed adult influences in his or her life will have a greater chance of sustaining a mobilized faith than kids who don't. This is why it's so important to move your few out to other people where they can form connections. If your kids or teenagers start connecting with another adult besides you and it bothers you, get over it. It isn't about you. It's about discipling kids towards real connection with God and with people. And the more adults you help them connect to, the bigger their concept becomes of who God is, because they will see Him through other adults. Second, move them to be the church. Why are you a small group leader? Because you want to engage in the mission of God and to connect your life with others. Because you've been poured into, and you know that the purpose of being poured into is so that you can pour out into others. This idea is true for your few too. Inside of the group is where they are poured into. Outside of the group is where they pour themselves out. So move them to be the church. Move them towards ministry. Move them towards loving others and serving others, and practicing how to put others first. Move them towards experiences that will shape their perspectives on other people and will broaden their spiritual horizons. Move them out so that loving others becomes a part of their DNA, and so that their faith becomes a living thing. Third, move them to what's next. Transitions can be tough on people, no matter how old or young you are. And part of your job as a small group leader is to do what you can to prepare your few for their next steps. We may be tempted to see some of these transitions as small in comparison to others, but we have no way of knowing how anxious or worried or excited our few are about changes. Moving to the next grade or small group can be a source of fear. Graduating high school unlocks a world of opportunity and also a world of questions. Starting at a new school can be scary. Moving to a toddler bed can be scary. So be prepared to ask yourself, what can I do to help carry them through this? If we don't take the time to think through transitions that our few are going through or will go through, then we're setting them up to get disconnected when it is most critical. Don't assume that your kids aren't anxious about change. Don't assume that your high schoolers are adults and ready to tackle the world on their own. When you move your few out to what's next, you are setting them up for the long haul. From the time they show up in your world or ministry, kids and teenagers are packing their bags. It's a fact of life, and time passes in a blur. But you have the chance to influence what your few pack in their bags. So what are you going to do with that influence? What are you going to encourage them to pack? They need other adults who are willing to show up for them and speak into their world. They need opportunities to see their faith in action as they experience the difference between attending church and being the church. And they need as many guiding hands as they can hold on to while they move from one phase of their life into the next. In other words, they need people like you to move them out of the comfortable circles and teach them that they are capable of big things. You can't do this for every kid, but you can do this for a few.